Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the October 2017 meeting of the Manatee Tiger Bay Club. Thank you all for joining us today. If you would please make sure that your cell phones are silenced or turned off. And then if you would stand and join me in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. We have a great topic today, another fantastic program from our programming committee. We're going to be talking about the state of education in Manatee County and some of the various issues that are being discussed now and are going to be discussed over the next couple of months. The days of school simply being about reading, writing, and arithmetic are long gone. It seems like controversy is constantly swirling around our educational system, and Manatee County is not immune. There is a proposal to raise millage rates, but many people question the need for more money and cite to past financial mismanagement. We've seen a rise in funding and support for charter schools, including those run by for-profit corporations, which many see as corporate welfare and a draining of resources for our public schools. We hear complaints that our children are over-tested, but how else can we gauge learning, comprehension, and preparation without objective tests? Currently, school board members are elected by voters countywide, but there's a referendum in 2018 to change this so that each seat is elected by voters in its own district. We're going to be talking about these issues and many more today with our distinguished panel. We have the chair of the Manatee County School Board, Charlie Kennedy. We have a senior advocate and care manager administrator for Opt-Out Florida Network, Amy Lee, and Cynthia Saunders, Deputy Superintendent of Instructional Services for the School District of Manatee County. My name is Matt White. I'm this year's president of Tiger Bay, and I'll be moderating. Our first speaker is going to be Chairman Kennedy. Charlie grew up in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and before moving here, had been coming to Manatee County since he was a teenager as a fan of the Pirates and their spring training home. Charlie has a BA from the University of Pittsburgh in 1994 and Master's of Education from Duquesne University, 2003. He moved to Bradenton in 2004 when he started his teaching career. He has worked at Youth Build Public Charter School in Washington, D.C., the Pendleton School at IMG Academies, and Manatee High School. Most recently, prior to becoming a school board member, he was a high school teacher of 11th and 12th grade social studies, U.S. history, and economics at Manatee High School. Please join me in welcoming Chairman Kennedy.
Thanks so much. Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Tiger Bay, for the invite today. It's really it's nice to be. It's not often I get to speak at events like this, especially in front of a nearly packed room. So I'll be honest, there's about 10 things I hope we can address today. I'll hit kind of the big ones that Matt's covered. Let me just give an editorial comment first that I certainly have some strong opinions on education issues locally and in the state. And I want to make sure that everybody understands that I'm representing my own views here. These are not views of the school board, just so you know. First, let me start at the state level. Some of you may be aware there was a very controversial education bill that was signed into law this past legislative session, House Bill 7069. House Bill 7069, it was an interesting process how it worked its way through the legislature. Both the Florida House and Florida Senate had been kind of working on different pieces. Some of them were making their way through committee. A couple that I can think of that were part of 7069, there might be more than two, had actually died in committee but somehow they were resurrected and became part of House Bill 7069. So what happened over one famous weekend in the spring, the Speaker of the House and the Florida Senate leader, Mr. Negron, got together and cobbled together these multiple pieces, turned it into one omnibus education bill, and then they came out on Monday morning and said, okay, everybody, we're not going to talk about this. There's going to be no debate. It's just an up or down, yes or no vote. And that's how this education bill came to be born. Now, there are some really good pieces to the bill. There are, it's increased funding for, special needs. There is the Schools of Hope funding, which Manatee County Schools has applied for Schools of Hope money for 2 of our elementary schools. And that Schools of Hope money is $2,000 per student to provide what in the business we'd like to call wraparound services, which basically just means kind of social services that children living in poverty, would be helped by. One of the negative things, in my opinion, about House Bill 7069 is it diverts public money to private entities and sometimes for-profit charter operators. In other cases, and we already have the Gardner scholarships, which divert money to public schools. So that's not really what my biggest problem is with that, because that kind of already exists in the state. But with the new bill, what can be done is, I'll just give you a very specific example. Let's say a charter school opens in Manatee County, and we are now required, the school district, the public schools are required to share locally raised capital millage, and we are required to share that money with for example, a privately run, a for-profit charter school. Now, the way before 7069, the way that would work is any charter school that built capital projects with public money, that asset was retained by the public. So in other words, that asset would return to the public school district. Under 7069, that private for-profit company would be able to keep the asset if they were to fail. So the school closes down, but the charter school company still owns the building even though the school has failed. So as you know, there's just some kind of common sense fairness issues. I guess I could go on and on about that, but I'll let that go for now. Getting back to some of our local issues, obviously kind of the hot button issue right now is the millage. Just a couple weeks ago, me and 2 of my colleagues voted to support a March of 2018 millage referendum, and therefore, with 3 votes, we're going to put it on the ballot for March of 2018. Now, the reason for that is, big picture, Florida already has a shortage of teachers. That's already happening. So if you project out 5 or 10 years from now, that shortage is going to be a crisis. And like Pinellas and Sarasota County, we want to go to our voters and say, are you willing to support a mill so that we could support the salaries of our teachers and staff? And really all district employees. This money, if it passes, would not just go to teachers, it would go to all school district employees. So obviously that's, anytime you talk about raising taxes, that gets controversial. But to me, well, number one, to me, all we're doing is going and asking the voters. So it's not like the school board is instituting a tax, excuse me. We're going to ask the voters what they think. Now, in order to get that job done, we as a school district have some challenges ahead of us. We need to educate the public on exactly what we're going to use that money for. Specifically, the teachers have been loud and clear about, well, how much of this money is coming to us and how much might be diverted to other projects. So one thing the superintendent and I have already discussed one-on-one between us is potentially going back and kind of redoing another resolution to spell out exactly, in percentages, for example, exactly what we're going to use the money for. So for example, we're going to spend 10% of the money raised if it passes on STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math. We'll spend 30% on extending the school day a half hour, and we'll spend 60% on teacher salaries, teachers and staff salaries. So that's one discussion point we've had so far. Another one, and this was kind of the idea of my colleague, Mrs. Messenger, who's sitting over there. Sunshine Law, she's not allowed to address me or anything. We can't talk, but at least I can point her out in the audience. But to Gina's credit, at our last school board meeting, Gina raised the idea of, instead of using tax money to raise $300,000 to hold this special election, because that's what it's going to cost, are there revenue streams that we could use instead of tax money? And we basically have two revenue streams. Our two biggest revenue streams for the school district are aftercare, so childcare, mostly at our elementary schools, and that's a revenue stream for the school district. Another revenue stream we have is facilities rental, I guess is probably the right way to say it. So if an outside party would like to use a school district facility for an event, or maybe they run a business and they would like to use a school district building, they are charged facility usage fees. And so we being the board and the superintendent, will kind of clarify that idea later for the public. I mean, this vote is going to be in March of 2018. We have 5 months to get our message out and to educate folks on exactly how we're going to spend the money. Obviously, part of what I hope to do today, since I'm a proponent of public education, and I believe not just because I'm a former teacher, but I have conversations with the people all the time outside of education who say, it's such a shame that teachers make so little money because they have such an important job. So this is not a right or left thing. Education is one of those issues where there's so much bipartisan agreement. We may have disagreements on how exactly to best serve kids, but there's a lot of agreement across the political spectrum for supporting education. So that's personally why I'm kind of optimistic about our voters supporting a mill, especially if the vast majority of it's going to go to supplement our teacher pay and help us be more competitive.
Go ahead.
Wow. No, I'm good. I finished my sentence and the buzzer went off, so I'll step aside. Thanks.
Thank you. When the speakers come in, as the moderator, I talk with them about how the process goes, and I'd say we have a timer and the buzzer goes off. But if you have something to finish, go ahead and finish it up. Well, apparently at the school board meetings, when the buzzer goes off, you're done. So the buzzer's going to work this week or this month, I guess. Thank you, Chairman Kennedy. Our next speaker is Cynthia Saunders. Cynthia has been the Deputy Superintendent of Instructional Services since 2015 and has been in education with more than 26 years of combined experience in advanced leadership, curriculum development, staff development, school administration, and as a teacher. She graduated with a master's degree from Nova Southeastern University in educational leadership, a bachelor's degree in mathematics education at the University of Central Florida. Go Knights. It's always Florida and Florida State and everything else, so I'm so excited to say go Knights. And an Associate of Arts degree from Central Florida Community College. Cynthia served as the Manatee District's Executive Director of Secondary Schools from 2013 to 2015. She was principal of Lake Weir High School in Marion County from 2006 to 2013, and has held previous posts of principal and assistant principal at high schools in Marion County. She began her career in education as a mathematics teacher at Dunellen High and has taught mathematics in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia. Please join me in welcoming Cynthia Saunders.
Well, I get the fun topic, testing. And I'm not sure if folks all in the audience are familiar with our accountability system, but it's not new. We have, since No Child Left Behind arrived in 2001, have had an accountability system of some sort of measurement tool required to determine if students are proficient and if they've met the basic requirements to matriculate through as well as graduate from high school, because that's the ultimate goal, is to make sure they're graduating and ready for the workforce. I think somewhere along the line, the intent was good. I think the intent is pure. We need to have some form of measurement so that we have, across the state, can say an A is an A, a diploma is a diploma, and we're on an equal playing field. But somewhere it did kind of morph out of control. And I believe, in my opinion, we saw that significantly in about 2012. Around that time, legislation was coming out with accountability measures more so for teachers, and they wanted to place a test on just about every content, every subject across the board. More so, they were also going to tie proficiency. We know about the third grade. You have to be proficient and have a measurement to pass and move from third to fourth. But they were even going to put a measurement to pass the civics assessment in middle school in order to go to high school. And then in high school, in addition to the algebra and the reading test, you were going to have to pass many other tests on grade level in order to graduate. And luckily, somewhere along the line, they pulled back and said, I think we've kind of gotten out of control. And we have since then pulled back a little each year. Remember, school districts have to enforce the laws that are placed on the ballots and passed. DOE is the enforcer and interpretation of those statutes, and then that's passed down to the districts. So we all have to find a way to be true to the statutes, but also find a way to ensure the success of our students, because really that's what it's about. How are we being able to support our students so that they can be successful and they can move on to productive citizens? So with this House bill that Charlie was speaking, they did talk a lot about reducing assessments. After all the controversy and all the debate and all the discussion, they removed one. One off the table, Algebra 2, that you don't even have to take the class to begin with. So it really, I guess they could say they met the letter of the law of reducing tests, because they did reduce tests, but they reduced a test that's not even a requirement. If you take the class, you had to take the state test, but you don't have to have that course. So it really, I don't think, met the letter of the intent of what some parents and some advocates were hoping to accomplish. Now, with that being said, I truly do believe there needs to be some sort of a measurement tool, an accountability system, so that we can ensure that the students are achieving the standards that we're supposed to be teaching. We can't just assume, without any monitoring tool, that if we call a course English or math and we give them the standards, that everyone is going to cover all the standards at the same level without a check and balance. So that's the million-dollar question. How are you able to ensure an equitable education across the board based on the expectations of teaching from the state? One might say that you could use teachers' grade books. Students can be very successful in class by the grades and the assignments given. And in a perfect world, that would sound okay if you knew that all the assignments were tied to very specific standards that showed mastery of learning. But if any of you in the room have had students in school, not all the assignments are that way. As a matter of fact, the teachers have great discretion on what they're giving for assignments or what they're grading for assignments. So this is the way that the state deemed that they are able to ensure an equitable education that they can account for at the end of the day. That students, if you met this threshold, you've mastered the skill, you're able to move on to the next level. Now, they have come up with more opportunity of discretion. In elementary, you are able to do a portfolio of standards and take other state norm tests if you're not able to pass the state assessment. In high school, for graduation, you are able to take the college entrance exam, ACT, SAT, PERT, some other items. So it's not just about one test one day, but they do require a minimum assessment to exit. And if we think about the world we live in, there are tests applied in every element of life. You can't get a driver's license without being able to pass a certain level of assessment to get your driver's license. Colleges require a certain level of entrance exam on that as well. So I don't see that the tests are ever going to go away. I do think we need to manage them in the best way humanly possible. I will tell you now, with the legislation, again, 2012 was when many of these things came into play, but where teachers' evaluations are now all tied, a portion of them, on how their students perform on the state test. So as you can imagine, being a teacher today is very different than being a teacher 10 years ago or 20 years ago. So it does add a level of stress and anxiety. Everyone knows the importance of what's occurring in the learning of the students. And we all know there's many factors that are coming into those classrooms, especially in some of the high-need Title I schools. It's not the same situation as it might be in a non-title. But the teachers' evaluations are tied, the teachers' raises are tied, and the school grades are tied to the performance of these tests. One of the items in this bill that's very controversial now is that at the end of this year, if you have had any schools struggling, and we're very fortunate, this year we have no failing schools in our district, first time in many, many years, but we do have a number of D schools. With these D schools, there are 2 this year that if we're not able to pull them out, it is Sugg Middle and Rogers Garden Bullock. If we are not able to pull them out of the D range into a C based on state test scores,
Please, go ahead.
they have one of 3 options on the table that the superintendent has to give to the Department of Education. Closure, they can be taken over by charter or taken over by an outside consultant company. It's never before been such high stakes as it is today in public education. With that being said, our team, our board, our whole school community is doing everything we can to ensure that those things do not happen in Manatee County. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Saunders. Our final speaker is Amy Lee. Amy serves as a senior advocate and care manager for families facing a decline in the health and well-being of an aging loved one. When not focused on seniors, Amy dedicates her time to advocating for the children, parents, and teachers of Manatee County Public Schools. She has served as an administrator of the Opt-Out Florida network group Opt-Out Manatee since 2015, fighting statewide against the punitive consequences of high-stakes testing in our public education system. Amy was born and raised in Endicott, New York. She earned her Associate of Arts degree in Human Services and Psychology from Mohawk Valley Community College in Utica, New York, followed by a permanent relocation to the Sunshine State in 1995. Please join me in welcoming Amy Lee.
Hi, it's a privilege to be here today. This is not only my first time speaking here, but my first attendance at the Tiger Bay event, so thank you all very much for having me. I hope to bring together a few things in regard to what Chairman Kennedy has brought up, as well as Ms. Saunders, in regard to the effects of the high-stakes testing in the classroom. Now, first of all, how did I get to be at this podium today? Go back 2 or 3 years ago, and I have 2 students who are at Palmetto High School, a sophomore and a senior. There was a year where they were put into a class called intensive reading. And I didn't quite understand why, but I deemed myself an average parent, and I read the school communications, I participated in meetings, I went to parent conferences. I thought, it's not a big deal. He must need a little help in reading. Didn't pursue it with the school, didn't ask any questions. I trust that the decision was made in his best interest. As that school year went on, he got A's and B's in the class all year. And come the following year, I was a bit shocked to get his schedule and see that once again he was placed in intensive reading. And now, mind you, this class is a remediation class that's done in place of the slot that would normally be given to an elective, something like art or music or engineering, or something that in the high school level in particular would be helping students maybe find their passion as they go out into the world after high school. So I scheduled a meeting with the school principal, and that was the week that I became an education activist. I found out that although the rules in the student progression plan in the county at the time were that if a student did not achieve a 3 or higher on a scale of 1 to 5 on our FSA, that they must be placed in intensive reading. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. It is steadfast. So my son in particular that I was concerned about missed the range for the cutoff for level 3 by 2 points. He was an honor roll student, and that year he was also enrolled in an ACE language arts class, which ACE is a program at Palmetto is where you can actually earn college credit for the class that you're taking when you successfully complete it. So I thought to myself, how can my child need remediation in reading and also be taking a college level language arts class? This seems bizarre to me. And it was essentially said, we're very sorry, Mrs. Lee, but this is the way our program runs. This is the way the progression plan is dictated, which the progression plan is a policy and procedure for pretty much anything that affects the students in regard to class placement. You name it, that's the document that we go to. So the following year, the community rallied, and we also worked with the school board and the district, and were able to make the student progression plan a little less certain, and we removed the word that said the student must be placed in remediation to the student may be placed in remediation. And what that did is that allowed the principals and the districts and the parents to be a little bit more involved and have the child looked at through a whole child standpoint versus just on that one day of the test. So that was my journey here. There's no short way to explain it. So that's how I became here today. A couple of things that I would like to tie to what both have already said today is what the impact of the high stakes are actually doing to our classroom. And to best demonstrate that, I'm actually going to read a statement that was put out by a teacher in another county just 2 days ago. And it's, to this point, been done on a source of anonymity, but I will tell you that this is an advocate that I have worked with over the past couple of years through the Opt Out Florida Network, and she is a very brave soul. So I'd like to share with you what it feels like to her based on the high stakes in the classroom. After 22 years, I don't know if I have it in me anymore. I am a teacher. I will always be a teacher. I love teaching, but this isn't teaching. Everything I am required to do is about preparing my students for the test. I spend all day, every day, ramming test prep down my students' throats. Then I do what seems like 8,000 reams of paperwork each week to prove that I am ramming test prep down my students' throats. There is no joy in this for them. I see their blank faces with eyes glazed over. There is no fun or excitement in learning, and they are not really learning. This past weekend, I spent literally every waking hour working, taking breaks only to do laundry and prepare food for my son. I wrote my lesson plans with all of the required non-negotiables included and explained. I examined my data to make decisions about what skills might need some reteaching and what skills could be practiced and reinforced in the centers. I dutifully created my differentiated centers and made them rigorous, which is a term that has no business in education. I printed off copies of things on my own printer, used my own ink and paper, because we only get 1,000 copies per month. I laminated, cut, and put things in folders to make sure that I was all ready for today. Then in the middle of my language arts block this morning, my principal walked in to do a walkthrough. Apparently, this go-round was focused on centers because she asked to see mine as she did for all of my teammates, I later learned. Well, I figured this one would be easy after everything I did over the weekend. She looked at them, asked me a couple of questions, and left. My observation notification came through after school, and I looked. Imagine my surprise when I received a basic for the Danielson Domain 1E, Designing Coherent Instruction. My principal's only comment, well, it's good to see differentiated centers. There needs to be paired text and writing in your centers. Make no mistake, I am open to criticism, especially when criticism is constructed and valid. This, however, is neither constructive nor valid. This is about playing a game. This is about making up a fault that isn't included in the rubric when you can't find one that is. This is about making sure that teachers don't get too many points so we can keep those merit-based raises to a minimum. This is what education has become. It's a game, it's inauthentic, and it's draining. They're putting out the fire that is blazed inside of me. They're destroying my soul and my passion. I don't know what to do now. I am a teacher. I will always be a teacher. I love teaching, but this isn't teaching. So I share that because I also shared it with some teachers in a Manatee County group on Facebook. And I was alarmed at how quickly they weren't likes that were racked up, they were the sad face. And how many people reached out to me and said, me too, I could have written this myself. Now, in part, I don't stand up here to fault the board or to fault the district. I'm sharing that with you because this is what has happened to education based on the legislative actions that are taking place. So what do parents actually want from the tests? Believe it or not, I am not anti-test. There is a purpose, to Ms. Saunders' point, of a test. We do have tests in life that we need to accomplish. What happens is when we are tying student success, teacher pay raises, school funding to everything on that test, yes, to Ms. Saunders' point, there are concordant scores and things that can be used via the ACT or at the lower grades for third grade, some other tests that can be used for promotion to fourth grade. However, it's still tied to the test, and the fundings of our schools are tied to the test. And until we as a community understand the damaging effects that are taking place from the legislation all the way to a local level in some cases, we're not going to change this. And we need the community to come together, and I hope through the conversation today we can have some eye-opening conversation to encourage all of you to go out and say, I need to learn more about this, I need to understand. So with that said, it was a pleasure to talk through a beat for once, so, because I am the one that walks away at the school board meeting, so.
Thank you very much, Ms. Lee. All right, so this is the portion of the program where we're going to open it up to questions. Please remember, you need to be a Tiger Bay member to ask your question. When you come up, please limit yourself to 30 seconds with a question. Let us know who the question is directed to, or if it's directed to the entire panel, and give us your name and that you are a member. So we'll get started.
Hi, I'm Rosalie Schaefer, and I'm a member. I'd like to address this question to Mr. Kennedy about the referendum. Putting the issues aside, I want to address the practicality of having a separate standalone election in March, very far away from any of the normal elections. The tendency would be to have a very low turnout. We live in a county, in a state, and a country with low turnouts anyway. You consider 65% turnout to be good. And then the primary elections, you're looking at something in the 50s. So you look at the standalone separate referendum elections and, probably something in the 30s. And who is going to turn out for it? Those who are most involved in it, those who care the most about it. And will that be the opponents of it or the proponents? So I know you would have to wait longer if you hold it in November to have the money that you need. But the risk of failure to gain the referendum, I was wondering if that might overweigh the idea to have it in March.
Okay.
Sorry for the long.
No, that's okay. Thanks, Rosalie. Wow. About turnout, and I think your numbers, and I think Senator Bennett would probably agree with me, that your numbers are probably a little too high. Your turnout numbers are probably too high. The reason that I advocated for March, and you touched on both. The first is that if we hold the referendum in March of 2018, the money will be available to us in the 18-19 school year. If we wait until November of 2018, it won't be available until the 19-20 school year. Strategy, turnout, the reason, again, I'm speaking for myself, not the board on this one. The reason I liked March is because, admittedly, during any special election, the strategy is to get your people out. Focus on this issue, get your people out, and win and get to 50%. Honestly, I'll be totally frank with you. Part of my reasoning was if we can get teachers and school staff and their families and supporters of public education out, we can win, and we can win handily. Because as we saw last year with the renewal of the half cent for capital, the voters of Manatee County supported that 59% number. I don't think we'll get to 59% with this necessarily because it's new. It's not a renewal. Again, that was part of my strategy. Another part of that, which you touched on, is that my fear is that in November, there are going to be multiple races. There are going to be constitutional amendments coming. We'll see how many. There will be 3 school board races. There is going to be the question, as Matt talked about at the beginning, of the question of do we make school board races district only as opposed to county-wide. So there's going to be a whole bunch of stuff on that ballot. And my fear was that something as important as a mill for teachers and staff might get lost in that ballot. It's going to be a long one. I'm not sure how many pages it's going to take to get everything on there. You didn't ask this, but I just want to address it because that really, the sense that I have over the past couple of weeks because when the board voted to pass this, that's when it really hit the public's attention, is that the school district's budget, I'll just use rough numbers, is about $700 million a year. So if you just look at 180 school days, that works out to about $550,000 per hour of the school day. So when you look at the total budget, $300,000 isn't a great. I mean, it's a big amount of money. Don't get me wrong, but when you look at let's spend $300,000 to potentially bring in the millage that supports the salaries that we see in Sarasota, I thought it was worth $300,000 to potentially bring in $30 million for our teachers and staff. And like I said at the beginning, to remain competitive. Did I cover everything, Rosalie? Okay.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Please.
I'm Rusty Russell. I'm the oldest member of Tiger Bay. I would like to ask each of our panel members, what is being done to keep the students from being afraid of taking a test? Test fear has been proven to be very detrimental to the grades. And so I think that something should be really strongly done to educate these students so they wouldn't be afraid of a test.
Well, I don't think there's a student in our system today that does not understand the importance of the test. And if you're in high school, your whole academic career has been exposed to test taking. But it is the responsibility of the school and the teacher to ensure that we are enabling them with the best strategies possible, giving all the accommodations that they're entitled to, in trying to minimize the outcome by letting them know that there are other measures we can use if this one academic day does not give them the score that they need. So I think we've done a pretty good job by mitigating some of that. Our graduation rates certainly have improved over the years, and we are definitely, the teachers are doing an outstanding job ensuring the quality of education. We do provide a couple of benchmark tests at the first and second quarter of the year, which is a small simulation. The reason we provide those, part of our reading plan and progress monitoring that we're required to do to ensure students that are struggling are making progress. We provide those assessments. They're in the process of doing those right now if they're in a tested area. So they do have some sort of practice in sense so that they are accustomed to those items. But anytime that you've got to pass a certain level to achieve the outcome, I don't know that we can completely take away the fear or anxiety, but we definitely have a lot of measures that we put into place hoping to mitigate that.
Along the lines of what Ms. On. Oh. Okay. Along the same lines, I think that's what the importance of meetings and forums like this are about. We really need for our community to understand the true impact of the test. Not everybody fully understands, and I thank you for the question, because not everyone fully understands the true devastating effects of the anxiety on the students in our classroom. And this all starts from the actions that are taking place at the legislative level. Through the Opt Out Florida Network, as an admin of a group, we get private messages from parents that say, I've had to take my child to counseling. We've had to start seeing a therapist because they're scared to death that they are not going to go to fourth grade. I think something we could do from a district standpoint possibly, and I'm sure we can have more conversation at another time, but would be to have a culture reset a bit within our schools. If you have to give the test, then that's certainly the case, but at the same time, there is a culture in the classroom where the fear and anxiety take over. And the ripple effect of the benchmark testing is felt far beyond the one session of the actual test. So I know Chairman Kennedy has brought it up at times to possibly look at reducing benchmark testing. But when we have our benchmarks at the middle and high school level, there's a ripple effect that happens within the schools. Students that are on a 7-period day can get shifted into block schedules. That means they may not see one of their teachers in a certain subject. Sometimes I've had it from a teacher in a message where they didn't see their students for 9 days. Okay, so there are logistical struggles that happen within our school buildings because a lot of the time the benchmark assessments are done in the libraries and in our computer labs. So at the elementary level, we have students who come home with the same library book, and when parents say, well, where's your new library book? Oh, the library's closed. There's pictures submitted all the time of signs hanging on library doors, closed for testing. So the ripple effect in our schools, because of the tests, are far beyond the test itself. It's not just about that hour. So between the culture and possibly looking at benchmarks differently, I think that would be one of the best opportunities to get that anxiety off the backs of the students, not make it such an integral part of the day.
Ms. Servia?
Good afternoon. My name is Misty Servia, and I am a member of Tiger Bay. And my question is going to be to Chairman Kennedy, but before that, I want to give a shout out to our school board member, Gina Messenger, who took the time to come here today and listen to the community. You'll notice she is the only school board member that is here besides Chairman Kennedy. So thank you both for being here. So my question is about the mill, the extra mill. And we are 5 months away from the election. And I've heard you say that it is the board's goal, and the district, not the district, but the board's goal to educate the community. That's the biggest challenge. Outside of that, what is the next biggest challenge? Is there still a problem of trust between the community and the board? Is the divided board on this issue a problem? I'd like to hear what the other problems are and if you have any answers to address them.
Misty, don't leave, because I'm going to have to ask you to repeat the last half of the question when I forget. And by the way, I'm honored to be called Chairman Kennedy, but please call me Charlie. If you see me on the street, just call me Charlie. It's just funny to hear Chairman Kennedy. Challenges for the millage. Yes, trust is an issue. We have some historical, I guess I would call them legacy financial issues that we are still dealing with that perception. That is not our reality currently. If you look at the school district over the past 4 years, our fund balance continues to rise year over year. Of course, we have, audit findings every year, but these are continuing to be taken care of. Our bond rating has gone up. Mr. Blitzko, bond rating has gone up the past 3 years. That's a fair statement to make. The bond markets, not the bond markets, the rating agencies have noticed the financial turnaround. I understand that there are things out there and there are trust issues out there, but part of our message that we have to get out is that is not this current school board. This is not the same leadership team. This is not the same board. These are not the same principals in many areas. It is a totally different school district. And if you look at us, where we have come, where we not just the school district, but where we have as a community have come from 2012, the September financial collapse, to where we are now, I think if you look at that with, a non, I don't want to say nonpartisan, but with an objective view, there's no denying that we're in better shape. But Misty, you're right. We do have to deal with that kind of historical perception. I don't think the divided board is really an issue. We had a really good conversation at our last board meeting about when the board takes a vote, even if you were on the losing side of the vote, you still get behind the board, and we move together as a team. We move forward together as a team. So I don't think that will be a problem at all. I hope I'm correct about that, but that is my perception. Did I miss anything? I remembered the whole thing. Okay. Thank you, Misty.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm Wileen Graham, and I think I'm still current on membership. They checked me out.
If not, we can take care of that.
Yeah, you'll cut off my mic, right? Okay. No, I'm here to, some of the questions have been answered as I read through the information I've picked up. But I would really like, and I have a feeling that they don't know it, I'm referring to the school board, and I didn't hear this subject matter listed with what kind of other subjects kids are expected to have to take in their course of school. But it says the school board is the one that uses, do they use a sex questionnaire presented to students? And I already know that they do because I just got word that a granddaughter has gotten this set of questions. So I'm just wanting to know who thinks it is necessary. It also, the parent is not allowed to read the questions. They can sign and say, yes, the student can take the test, but the parent can't read what the questions are before the student takes it. And also it is given to all the schools. But then at one point I saw that it's listed only for certain area codes in the county, but the area code for my granddaughter wasn't one of them. But then it concerns me that these questions are given without the parents having the ability to read it. And I just want to quote a couple of the questions. This is contraband literature that I got, not this year, or not last year, but I've had it in hand for a while. One of the questions, and now this is for a middle school girl, or any student, that the parent has said yes, without reading, not having access.
Yes,
okay. How old were you the first time you had sex? This is for a 6th or 7th grader. And the answers could be, I never had sex. It goes on down 12 years, 16 years was the last time. That's when I started. Another one was, I don't have it because I don't want to have a baby early. Another, are girls, one of the questions that's asked of the student, are girls more popular if they have sex? And it goes on. I'm on 58 questions I could give you. But I just don't think, if the parent has full access to the questions that are asked, it should happen. But for them to pass this out to a 6th grade, 7th grade, to all students, why just certain area codes? I
let's go
would
ahead and
feel
let them-
very discriminating if my kid couldn't have
Sure.
taken that test.
Let's go ahead and let somebody.
So I would address it to The school board, because it says the school board is authorized.
Thank you for your question. We'll let somebody answer.
Okay, there.
Let the Director of Curriculum Instructions.
Since I have not seen exactly what you're referencing, I probably have a tentative idea. We do have a grant in middle school, and it's called It's Your Choice. It's Your Choice. And it is funded to help work with students more in encouraging abstinence and preventing teen pregnancy. I would imagine that that is where that came from, because the questionnaire survey that you're speaking of, I'm not familiar that that would be with any specific curriculum that we have in middle school. So with this grant in that type of program, it is an opt-in. Students and parents have to agree to let them hear some of those curriculum and exposure to that information. And the whole point of it is to prevent teen pregnancy. So they probably were doing a survey that they gather either from the state, because part of this is, state and national funding for prevention of pregnancy. So, but I certainly can get that, and if I'm wrong, I can contact you. I know Davis very well, so I will contact you if the information I'm giving you is different, but just from what you're speaking of, I would say it's from that grant program that we come in, and students are getting information of prevention of making bad choices.
Thank you.
Mark, can I say something quick on that?
Sure, of course.
Thanks, Mr. Grant, for the question. I just want to throw in really quick that through the programs like the It's Your Choice program, and there are a couple other community agencies out there working on teen pregnancy, Manatee County has gone from the 11th highest teen pregnancy rate in the state, and if somebody in the room can help me out, I think we are now in the 40s highest. So we've gone from 11th highest to 47th out of 67 counties because of programs like It's Your Choice and other teen pregnancy prevention. So obviously those questions are pretty shocking, but as Ms. Saunders said, they don't get those questions unless the parent would come in. But I'd like to talk to you afterwards because I'd like to see where that came from anyway. But
Thank you. Commissioner?
Thank you. I know it's running late now. Robin DeSabatino, Manatee County Commission, and I wanted to thank you for this. And this is just another topic that we won't be able to fully address here, but we really need to have the discussions between the commission and the school board. And I'm speaking for myself and not the county commission. But what I see from the county commission is we have a lot of children that fall through the cracks. And that's what I'm really concerned about. I wish every parent was an Amy Lee, but we don't have all the moms in Amy Lee who are able to take this to the next level, who are able to speak out and help their children. There's so many kids that we're lucky they get to school and they don't even have a meal before they get to school and so on. But I was at a meeting last week and I see former Commissioner Gallen. He was very instrumental with the DJJ, and there was a workshop between Sarasota County and Manatee County about the students that are in the DJJ program and those that are incarcerated at the jail. And I want to find out about the funding to keep the education going for the children in these programs, because we know that if they don't get a GED or they don't graduate, their chances of success are diminished. So I heard, and correct me if I'm wrong, that there is funding in the Sarasota County system for the GED programs at the jail. And since it is part of the public education, they are entitled to receive that education. But I was told that there's no funding through the MTC. I think that the program is generated through the MTC, and there's currently no funding for that. So that I'm really interested in finding out if we have funding, if we don't have funding, and again, it doesn't have to be today, but maybe another workshop. Thank you.
Saunders?
We do have DJJ funding, all districts do, and we provide teachers that go into the jail and provide all their academic services. So, we do, and it's ran through our school district, through our ESE and Student Services Department. So we provide all the accommodations and instruction needed. And, our hope in many cases, if there are students, if they're K-12, they are not in there for long-term. It's a short-term situation. Now, in terms of the GED for the adult side, that is something that, Doug Wagner and MTC would know those statistics. But if there are K-12 students, we do provide their academic instruction with sending teachers that are permanently assigned there for their instruction.
So there are a lot of students that didn't graduate, and yet they're still under the 21 level, and they're still eligible to get funding. So there's a gap there.
Right. If they are still within that umbrella, they are allowed to see. And I will tell you, Mike McCann, who's our dropout prevention specialist, he is working with the court system where we are referring more of those students to get a GED. And we've expanded our GED program in the last year.
Is there anything you'd like to add? All right. Thank you all very much. Excellent presentations, excellent questions today. The programming committee, when they sat down to talk about this topic, the list of possible things to talk about was amazing. So thank you to the programming committee to kind of narrow things down. Thank you to the speakers for giving us a well-rounded picture of the different issues. We're getting towards the end of the year, going to be starting a new year next year, a new board, some new leadership. We'll talk about that a little bit more next month. But I would like, if you could the members of the board that are here stand up, the members of the programming committee, if you could stand up, I just want to recognize you for a great year, great programs. And if anybody's interested in becoming more involved in Tiger Bay, please seek out one of our board members. They're happy to give you information about the group, about the board. We'd love you to be involved. The more minds at the table, the better. Thank you again to the speakers for taking the time out and being a part of the program. Those of you who know millennials, talk to them about Tiger Bay. As we look around the room, there's a lot of people that aren't millennials. And we're really trying to encourage millennials, the young leaders in the community, to come and join Tiger Bay and be a part of this discussion, to join us and learn about these issues, because eventually it is going to be their county. So it's important. So if you know some millennials, invite them to be a part of it. We have some special rates for them to get them involved. The next meeting is Thursday, November 16th. Please mark that on your calendars. We haven't finalized the topic yet, but I think we're pretty close, and it's going to be a very, very interesting topic with, I think, some very heightened emotions and thoughts on both sides. So keep your eyes open. Thanks again to Charles Clapsaddle, the group at METV, for always showing up. And finally, as you know, we always have the Tiger by the Tail Award. And true to form, again this year, I forgot to assign a board member to do that, so I apologize. But this month, I want to give it to someone who kind of went off topic. We talk about, what are we going to talk about this program? But Commissioner DiSabatino raised a very excellent point about what are we doing to catch those students that maybe aren't going the traditional route, and what are we doing to catch those students and ensure that they get that minimum level of education, that GED, so then, I don't want to say it this way, but when that light bulb goes off, they've got that, and they can then go ahead and move forward and not be held back. So Commissioner DiSabatino is our Tiger by the tail. Thank you all very much. I really appreciate you coming out. Have a great month, and we will see you on November 16th.